Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for the track 1 installment of our first Noyce PI peer webinar series. My name is Drew Scammell. My pronouns are he, they, and I'm a program associate with the Inclusive STEM Ecosystems for Equity and Diversity, or ICED program at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. This new series, offered in collaboration by AAAS and the NSF Noyce program, centers on developing and implementing grants for the 4 Noyce tracks. Presenters are Noyce PIs, who have led multiple grants to prepare and retain STEM teachers in urban and rural high-need schools, and have shared research about their work. Presenters will describe their work on the Noyce grant, general and specific issues that can arise, strategies that brought success, and other advice for Noyce project leaders. As mentioned, today's session focuses on track 1, the Teacher Scholarships and Stipends track. Before I formally introduce our wonderful speakers and jump into the webinar, I have a few housekeeping notes I'd like to share. This presentation is being recorded. The recording, along with the slide deck from the speakers, will be made available in the coming weeks on our website at nsfnoyce.org. You'll also receive an email with the link to the recording when it's available. Additionally, we have closed captioning for this workshop, and you can download and view the full transcript by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And today, to discuss track 1, we are honored to be joined by Drs. Cavallo, Steve Farenga, and Sharon Vestal. Dr. Cavallo is the Assistant Vice Provost, Director of the Center for Research on Teaching and Learning Excellence, and Co-Director of UTeach Arlington at University of Texas at Arlington. Her current Noyce Award is recruiting and preparing a new generation of mathematics, science, and computer science teachers for high-need schools. Dr. Steve Farenga is the Program Director for Secondary Science Education and a Professor of Science Education at Queens College. His current Noyce Award is preparing highly qualified STEM teachers to support effective learning in remote, in-person, and hybrid learning environments. And finally, Dr. Sharon Vestal is an Associate Professor of Mathematics at South Dakota State University. Her current Noyce Award is enhancement of mathematics and science teachers in rural schools. So with that, thank you all once more for joining us today. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to our first of our fantastic speakers, Dr. Cavallo. I'll pull down my slides, and hand it over to Anne.
Okay. All right. All good.
That's great.
Ready to go. All right. Ready to go. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm happy to share the Noyce program. And as we said, the outline of the project. First, I'll give you a little overview of our Noyce program at UT Arlington. And then really the charge we were given was to describe developing and implementing the grant, the strategies that work, some general issues, and anything the project leader should know about track 1. So that's where we're going to go with this. So first, a little introduction. I've been PI of 4 Noyce Awards starting in 2008. 2008, 10, 14, and 17 were the proposal dates. I actually had one at Wayne State University, but then shortly after came to UT Arlington. And there's the team that have been co-PIs are listed there of the College of Science and College of Engineering, have been great partners throughout. One of the key elements of it have been the partners, as I'll talk about later, but one has been a Noyce project coordinator that I built into the grant. She retired in May, but I'm working to get her back to come part-time. She wants to come back part-time. Jamie Williams, she's been amazing. And I recommend highly to have someone that stays with you to help you with grant work. And then a Noyce scholar leader who's Adele Quintana. She also is a retired math and science teacher, and she's also half-time on the grant. There's faculty content and pedagogy mentors, which are faculty at UTA in both science, engineering, and education that support the students. We have an external evaluator, Dr. Michael Odell, some of you may know from UT Tyler, and have had graduate research assistants built into the grant. So that's the program. There's some pictures. And so when I developed these grants, even from the beginning, always focused on 3 objectives. It's recruiting teacher candidates, providing an effective program, and inducting, monitoring, and mentoring teacher candidates. So always focused on those 3. And all of them did this, but each changed a little bit or advanced. Some of them advanced, to make it different, have a different focus each time, but basically recruiting, providing an effective program, and inducting, monitoring, and mentoring the teacher candidates when they're out there to support them. So writing the proposal, if you're new to writing proposal, I always started with those three objectives. Here's what we're going to do. But then discussing why these objectives. Well, we have to first, when you write a proposal, establish the need. And so it's a upside down, it's an hourglass design. What's the national need for teachers? And you would cite reports, Rising Above the Gathering Storm, The Nation at Risk, and some newer documents. Start with where's the teacher shortage. Then the proposal would go into what's the issues like in your state. So I looked at Texas Workforce Commission, and this would be for people who are maybe writing their grant proposal now. What is going on in your state? I looked to see the teacher shortages that we have in the state, and I cite reports and what's the need in the future going forward. And then looked at regional and local data. And I even contacted schools to see where science and math teachers are needed, how many are needed. It was after the school year started. Have you filled positions? And I got some numbers from them. I described the school districts' demographics and their SAT scores in the urban schools compared to the more suburban, wealthier school districts, and showed that there's quite a difference in high need and demographics of the student population and teacher turnover rates and things like that, to really show, and with passion, that, you know what, the students in Dallas need good teachers. We need to fix this gap that is happening and this problem. We're looking at these wealthy school districts right next door to Dallas, for example, that have, low diversity, that have no problems economically with their student population, and they're right next to Dallas, which is totally opposite. And they have, they're struggling in those school districts. So you show that you really need this. And so then how is your university best suited to address it? And in the case of UT Arlington, we're right in the heart of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right in the middle of the high need school districts. So we were able to say we're well positioned. We have great partnerships with our College of Science and College of Engineering. So we're ready for this. We can do this. And so then the hourglass opens up, and we explained our plan and how we're going to do it, still focusing on the objectives. Then how we're evaluating, still focusing on the objectives. How are we going to evaluate those three things? Recruit, the plan for preparing the teachers, and how we're going to evaluate their induction in the field. So those three things are how our plan is going to do it, how our evaluation is going to do it, and then described, of course, intellectual merit, broader impacts, and then how we would disseminate findings to others in the field, of course, is also important. But show your passion, show that you can do this, you have this, and that this is needed. You have to do this, and that you have this, but focus on the objectives that you have. So one other thing that I thought was really important and is important in any proposal is to show a timeline, to show that in the time given, in the 5 years, you break down each objective, and here's what's going to be done, here's who's going to do it, and here's when it's going to be done. So you fill every month of your project, and here's like objective 1 and 2 to show how it's going to be done. So that was how the proposal was designed. Of course, there's other elements that you all know how to write proposals, but it's really important to show how you're going to do this and who's going to do what, and how you can do this within your 5 years. Just prove it. You got to prove it to the reader. And so then implementing it. And so then here's what we've been doing in implementing it. So once we got the proposal funded, now what do we do? So here's our recruitment. So that's objective number 1. So we went to orientation. We had strong recruitment while the parent is sitting next to their student, and we're talking about $10,000 scholarships. The parent's like, hey, why don't you try, go into this? This is a good idea. And so, we advertised at new student and transfer student orientation. We offer pizza lunches to recruit students, flyers, all the things you see here. Flyers posted, electronic boards as well, communication, email to organizations. I personally, and my co-PIs and team members students went to large enrollment STEM classes and recruited. And I still hear from students that said, I hadn't thought about teaching until you came to my biology lecture and mentioned it and mentioned the scholarship. And I thought, maybe I should try this. So they came. There's a Get the Facts Out, if you're not familiar with it, from Colorado School of Mines. Great resource for gathering, recruiting, great tools, and a lot of it's customized for your area and so on. I visited some high schools, did some presentations there. Community college partners have helped us. Social media, I have a Facebook, not that students really use Facebook anymore, but we have Facebook, Instagram, those kinds of things, and try to keep them engaged that way. And then we also have had an internship program where we would recruit freshmen and sophomore STEM majors to work in the summers at some of the STEM camps we host and then museums and so on. So then here's the in program. So the program itself, while they're in the program, once they're in, we built a cohort group and we have a UTeach program. So we that helped. We built a sense of belonging and gathering. We're fortunate to have a space on campus, and they have a student lounge that they painted themselves. We asked them, they picked UTA colors and painted god awful orange. And but it's, I think they're going to repaint it soon. But they love it. It's their place that they can go, especially if they're a student that commutes. They have a place that's theirs. And the Noyce students have meetings there and that kind of thing. It's their place. And they attend Noyce Scholar Learning Seminars that sometimes they run, and usually they use that space to do them. Sometimes have panel sessions where we bring back the experienced Noyce scholars to talk about their experience teaching. But we always have a welcome new scholars, and we have an end of year celebration of graduates for sure that they come to. And then we have various other seminars throughout the year. And then we engage them in professional development and other activities like the Western Regional Noyce program and Cast and Camped. And there's a grant I have that's called CPID I've brought them to, which is an engineering project. There's a picture there where I brought a couple to Argonne National Labs, which was really fun. And then when I mentioned STEM camp counselors, we also recruit them to continue being counselors. Student organization that they created, near peer mentor program. Also, we have ongoing and evaluation program. And then we also have study sessions for the Texas exam. We might have a pizza. Again, pizza seems to be a go-to. They like pizza. So we give them, might provide pizza, and we come and we'll prepare and work together in a study session for the Texas exam, so they're prepared for the state teacher exam. And then once they're in the program, once they're in the teaching, they graduate, they go, then they're assigned a school-based mentor teacher, so a teacher in the school. And now it could be our own, since we've had so many, since 2008. Now it could be one of our graduates who is their mentor. I mentioned our Noyce Scholar Leader. She goes out and sees all the teachers that are there in their first years of teaching, just gives induction support and meets with their mentor teacher and the scholar. And then they continue to do the Noyce Scholar Learning seminars with the pre-service teachers. And also they engage in our conferences and all the other activities that the others do. And then now, what are some program outcomes once they do graduate? So what we have on the left is some of the demographics of our students. We're a Hispanic serving institution, so we do have 27% of Hispanic students. So it's it's about where we are as a university. It's maybe slightly higher even. And we are good. Mathematics seems to be our strong area, but we do have, of course, a lot of science, but we do have a strong showing of math. And then altogether, 88%, it was even a little higher, but COVID kind of took some away, but we're going to go back and recalculate again, see if some have come back. But overall, 88% either fulfilled their teaching requirement already, or they did fulfill and now they're administrators in their school district, or they're currently teaching, and then another 3% are still in the program. And then, so what our number 3 on my agenda was strategies that worked. And so I mentioned the team. The team is number 1. You got to have a good, strong team, and definitely build in a project coordinator, who I call our Noyce Scholar Wrangler, because you got to have someone that wrangles them and gets them to do what they need to do. Sign this paper, here's some information, whatever it is they got to do. And then our secondary Noyce Scholar Wrangler is that Noyce Scholar Leader, who goes out and sees them all and is in touch with them as well. And the GRAs have always helped keep our data and keep our database. The thing with them is that they turn over, they graduate. I'm like, really? Do you have to graduate? I just got you set and now they graduate. But they keep, I keep training. I have them overlap so they train one another as to how to keep data on the scholars and where they go once, if they change schools and that kind of thing. So, and strategies that work is focusing on your objectives, continuously keeping those 3 in mind, building community, keeping our Noyce scholars involved, reaching out to them, sharing news, accolades, keeping kind of this family together, and sharing through social media as much as they will participate. General issues that can arise. So make sure that you've created a Noyce scholarship stipend agreement, that you work with your scholarship office, and we sat with them, the legal office, financial aid. We worked up an agreement, a contract of sorts, to make it a forgivable loan so that we don't have to chase them. We started chasing them down in the beginning. We're like, oh, okay, no, we can't do that. So if they leave and they disappear, they've got 8 years. So, but if they make it a forgivable loan, then it defers over to the university to handle it. So then, tracking them is work. So you have to track them. And I think my colleagues will talk about that in a little bit, but contact information, keeping it up to date, make a database right away and keep it and continuously update it in a database, password protected shared database, and work to keep it up to date every year, and reach out to them and tell them, I'm going to reach out to you. Going to reach out. You got to send in your information. Tell them all the time. And then assigning the school-based mentor teacher, if they're getting a stipend, you've got to have someone that's going to do their paperwork, that's going to be so they can get their pay. And you can find out, how do I pay them? We pay them with what's called APS forms. And then if you have a subaward, there's another layer. So I have a subaward for my most recent. And so that's another layer of work that we can talk about if you decide to have a subaward. And administration changes can change a lot, like dean changes and things like that. So that's another story too. We can talk about if you have questions later. But anything else, the next one was anything else you should know. I just would like you to, and hopefully I shared this down properly, but Voices of UTA Noyce Scholars can tell you anything else. Let me know if sound is okay.
So in high school, I was planning on majoring in education and becoming a teacher, actually. But when I talked to my counselor, she thinks that since I like math so much, I should just become a math major and can't always do teaching an alternative route. So I was majoring in math and actuary science, hoping to become an actuary. But during that time, I was also working at Arlington High School as an avid tutor. And during the first year or so, I fell in love with teaching students, just seeing the light bulb go up their head, you brought me joy, and that really gave me passion for teaching instead of going straight up to actuary. I made the switch to UTeach and decided that was the right path. And with the Noyce Scholarship, the financial aspect has helped me tremendously in terms of helping me focus in school and not having to worry about work after school, and really focusing on lesson planning and developing myself as a teacher. So greatly, really appreciate the Noyce Scholarship for funding my final year at UTA. And aside from that, the Noyce Scholarship have brought me to meet a wide variety of people, and the support they gave is tremendous. If I need anything, they are there. That gave me even a greater boost and confidence in succeeding and helping the future.
So the scholarship allowed me to have an opportunity to really focus on what I learned in the UTeach program in terms of the 5 E's. In addition to that, because the Noyce Scholar program is widely recognized, it also allowed me to participate in conferences, where it allowed me to network with other teachers to serve the underprivileged students. That's definitely one of the biggest benefits, is to be able to network with other school districts and their teachers, and really gain a plethora of opportunities and experiences from other people, and to collaborate and to learn from them as well. And one of the original piloting UTeach students, but I did take a break, but I did end up graduating and utilizing the funds from the Robert Noyce Scholars Program.
Oh, Anne, I don't think we can hear you with the.
Sorry, I
Oh,
got
there we go.
muted. Are you unmuted? Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay, so really, I was just going to summarize by saying it helps the students, and that's really the goal, and it helps them to do what they need to do. So really, the other things the Noyce does is we're really doing a service and to the schools, to the students, to our students, helping them be able to focus on teaching and be excellent teachers where they're most needed in our high need school district. So that's all I have. And if you want to reach out to me, there's my email. So thank you. I'll turn it over.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cavallo. And if
Yeah.
anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, so you don't have to keep them in your brain. And we will save those for the Q&A at the end of the session after we hear from our other two speakers. But next, we'll hand it over to Dr. Farenga.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Can you hear, and you hear me? Okay, fine.
Yep, can hear you.
Perfect. All right. I don't know why this is splitting, but here we go. Let's put this. Okay, so when no one told you about the track one, I'm going to pick up from some of the things that Anne had discussed. Number one, now that you have your grant, what are you going to do? Yes, you have to talk about and report about the recruiting, why your program was effective, and almost all of the Noyce programs do have some type of a mentoring component. And all of those things are going to be fine, but now that you have everything in place and on a 5-year track, usually what we did was the first year, we would take a planning year to get everything into place, recruit the students that we needed, and then get moving in years 2 to 5. So that would take care of the other years. But in between all of that, and it's a bit of work with the recruiting. And the only thing I want to add to Anne's recruiting is the thing that we really found most effective was snail mail. We sent out all the electronic mails. We sent everything out on boards, on anything you could possibly imagine. But what really became effective is when the students got a letter at home that said, we may have a grant for you anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, depending on whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student. And that seemed to, if it didn't catch their attention, as Anne said, it definitely caught their parents' attention. So when we're talking about reporting and the things that we needed to do, there are certain reporting deadlines for the Noyce that might be a little bit different than some other grants that you may have had. One of the things, there's 2 deadlines. One generally comes up, it used to be in January, but this year they seem to have moved it to December. And that's where you're reporting on every one of your candidates, the places where they're placed, any of your collaborators, and basically keeping some tracking, which I'm going to go through in a minute. Then there's the NSF annual report, and that goes to your program officer, and that's generally due between May and June, okay? And then I have additional data collected. On additional data collected, this is the data that I want to use with my program team to be able to write and publish from the grant. Because in future grants, what they're going to be really looking for is how much did you expose the national audience to the Noyce grant? What is the bang for the buck that they're getting beyond your institution? So, and this can be clever ways, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be about the capacity building that you're doing, but there may be some other things that take place. So one of the things that we do is, because our grant is for technology as well, we have a drone program. And in that drone program, our researchers are looking at people's spatial intelligence. So we're testing the candidates' basic spatial intelligence, how they're going to use these drones in the classroom, how they motivate students, what type of environmental sensing can we do with the drones, where we're bringing in the chemistry, all different types of things that can take place. All of that data we collect that's extra that Noyce doesn't necessarily want, but it also becomes something extra for you that you can then write as part of your research agenda. And then that also gets the grant published in journals. So that's just something that I want to call your attention to, you know, at the beginning. And I didn't do this on our first grant because I was so crazy just trying to get everything in place. But by the time we got to the second grant, I said, you know what, we have to, you know, our program officer wanted to know, well, what did you publish from the grant? What did you get out, you know, besides your presentations? So deadlines, like I said, in the fall semester, usually by the end of, like I said, this year it was December because they were putting in a new tracking program. But usually it's mid-January where you have to report on some of your candidates. Okay, and that's something separate. In the spring, though, comes the program report to your program officer. This also comes with your evaluator, okay? That you have to select an evaluator for the grant if you don't have one. And I would really get to know your evaluator. I think it's really important that you make sure that your evaluator comes to the special functions that you're doing. So we run a conference every year. Our students go up to our field station in Black Rock Forest for a week. I want the evaluator to go up at least one of the days to see what the students are doing. We also work with the Museum of Science in Queens, where the students do an internship during the summer for a week. And I want the evaluator there, and I make it clear that, you know, these are some of the things that I need you there to report on, and not just looking at my numbers and things as such, because I feel that all of these things really round out what your grant is actually doing. So, you know, remember, you're paying your evaluators well. Make sure that they're doing the work that you require. Okay, and as I was going to say, the spring report is due to the program officer, and that's through research.gov. And this is your program, this is the evaluator's report and your report on what is taking place. If you have an evaluator and you don't agree with everything the evaluator has written, what I always do each year, and I submit, I read the evaluator's report, and I report also whether I agree with the evaluator, disagree with the evaluator on certain points, or whether they left something out. And I submit that with my report as well, just to let the program officer know that, you know, we are watching everything that's being said and whether we really feel things are accurate. Okay. So there are 6 sections that you report on. One is going to be your post-secondary institutions, okay, and that's your college. And some of you may have sub-awards that we were just discussing with other colleges or joint awards, or you may not be the only university on it, or you may have someone from the private sector that may be in, from the nonprofit sector, okay? The school districts that you're working with, scholarship recipients, these are undergraduates only, and they use the terminology in Noyce this way. Stipend recipients will be your master's level students or any students that may have graduated from 4 years. Your post scholarships and stipend fellows, we didn't have any of those in our particular grant. Any Noyce interns, and we didn't have any Noyce interns either. So for our grant, really what we've focused on was since they're all science majors, and it becomes very difficult in New York State for undergraduates to get the full amount of education courses and become a full science major, most of mine wind up being graduate students who come back, or they may be undergrads who have 2 semesters left, and they can finish their second year for the certification part of the program in a master's program. So what is the reporting period for this, for the survey? As I've said before, this is what's generally due in January, and the survey is not the program report to the officer. That's the second one. So after your report ends, do I still need to report for the current reporting period? And the question is yes. Okay. Unless, wait, something's just come up on the line. Oops. Okay. Unless you have completed, the reporting for all your recipients supported by your award, reporting continues until all your recipients have met their teaching requirements for your program. So for master's level students, for every year that they wind up getting support, which is generally for us, it's 1 year, you have to track them for at least 2 years. Undergrads who get 2 years of support, you have to track them for at least 4 years, okay? But remember, they have a time period in between before they may start teaching, which may extend that period. Could go up to 6 years for some students. And the reporting, and that's why you have to make sure that the students keep in contact with you, which was one of the things that Anne brought up when she said that they make sure that they have a director for the program. We have a director as well. We pay the director so that he can keep all those logistical types of data, which, really can be, quite a bit when you're tracking a number of people. So in our first part of the grant, we had 52 candidates that we had to keep track of. We lost 4 candidates. The second grant, we promised them in 3 years, 30 candidates, and we'll wind up with about 33 candidates that we'll wind up tracking. So when you look at that, it's like 80 something candidates that are being, tracked. Some have completed, some haven't completed, but we keep moving in that direction. And that's why I'm focusing on the reporting, because it does become important and you don't want it to trip you up in the end. So when we are looking at the reporting, okay, this is what it's going to look like. All right, the federal agency, it's going to talk about your reporting number, the PIs, the co-PIs who are on the project, okay. All of this, will take place. This is the easy stuff to fill out. What Anne was talking about, the things you're going to talk about in the report are, what are the major goals of the project? Okay. Go to the proposal, get them out. What was accomplished under these particular goals? Okay. Provide a brief summary of the overall achievements that highlight the most significant outcomes. You don't have to talk about every goal in the report, okay? But you do have to select, I generally select 1, 2, or 3 of the goals that really stood out in the report that I can talk the most about and that I have the greatest amount of data. Okay. So every one of your grants, you probably put in certain things that were going to make this grant special. So what were the major activities that were also, that are part of this grant? So any key activities that were taken as part of the grant, you can use bullet points if you want for the descriptions, and any actions that you have taken, if there have been any changes to what those major activities may have been, these things will be noted too in a separate part, of the report. So when I'm talking about that, one of the things we were doing when COVID hit was we used to go to our, I said, outdoor ed facility, our field station, and we'd spend a week there. Well, when COVID hit, we couldn't do the field station, so we had to have something that was different. So what did we supplement it with, online for that particular year? Those are the types of changes and things that you want to keep track of. So any of the specific objectives, so what are you measuring and how are you measuring these outcomes? These are going to be also all very important for your evaluator. And your evaluator, I hope that you sat down with them as you were writing your project report, because they can also help you with identifying to make sure that your objectives are measurable. If they're not measurable, they're not going to really do you much good in the writing, because you won't know if you've accomplished them. Okay. What were the significant results, from your program? These are all things that are still part of the report. I know a lot of this seems redundant, but this is the way in which they actually ask, the questions when you are filling out, the report. Okay. We usually try to provide visuals, charts, graphs, in anything. We keep videos, as you saw, and showing all of those, just make it more tangible. Okay. Key outcomes and any other achievements, detail anything that's noteworthy that took part as part of the grant, even if you didn't include it in the grant. Okay. And I would keep that down, because that might be what you might use for the second time if you resubmit the grant again. How I would change this grant to make it most effective based on the first grant that I had, or my first experience. Emphasize the project's overall value. They always want to hear the national need, then possibly state or local need. And I think for all of us, we all know there is definitely a shortage of science and math teachers across the disciplines. In our program, we have 22 different science, education, and technology programs alone that are just part of my program, from anything from bilingual science, education, to they all have to specialize in one particular science and then pick up one area of technology, as well. So they're also going to ask about what type of professional development are you providing to the Noyce candidates, and how is it different than your normal program? What are you doing that's making the Noyce candidates stand out and be special? So we identify those opportunities. And like I've mentioned before, for us, it's going to the field station. It's the training with the drones. We also have another technology program called Purple Air, where we provide training on air quality sensing, and we provide the air sensors, and we train the Noyce candidates specifically in what's the chemistry in the air quality and what are the local health effects. We then expect those candidates, when they're teaching, to use this in their classrooms, to have their students be motivated by gathering real-time data about the air quality, both in their schools and outside of their schools. Now, I will say we ran into a number of issues with them inside the schools, where certain superintendents did not want them inside. So that's another issue. But these are the special things that were part of the technology part of the program, to get the students more motivated and to have them more highly trained about real global issues that science educators should really be aware of. And then that also has provided an avenue for our research agenda, and for people to be able, my junior faculty, who are also the co-PIs, to be able to write on the project. And it also brought a nice collaboration, a strong collaboration, because we joint teach in the science program as well, with many of our colleagues, in the sciences. We do run a workshop, a conference, I should say, a Reimagining Science and Technology conference every year. We hold ours in April. It's also a recruiting event for us. We generally have 100 teachers, and last year we had 537 high school students who attended the conference, and we run 28 different workshops during the day that are SciTech, which are the Noyce candidates. They teach the workshops. And every one of the schools that comes and all the students, they get to select 2 of the workshops and a keynote, and we do lunch. But again, try to get as many things that you can get as much of a bang for your buck. As Ann said, recruiting is a big issue, and you spend a big amount of time on it, and it is tough. I can also say I'm an evaluator on another grant, and they're lucky to get 2 or 3 students a year, and they really try. And it's just tough. So if you can do these extra things, whether it's the pizza day or whatever it may be, or ours at the conference, where you can use these things also for recruiting, also for training, also for professional development, it just will make life a lot easier. All right. And also highlight the number of individuals who benefit from the opportunities you provide. This is what I've been talking about the dissemination of results, because this is one of the questions that they ask. Have the results been disseminated, to communities of interest? So there's all of the regular things, like you may go to Washington and you may do your poster sessions at Washington. We just came back from NSTA. We came out from the National Biology Teachers Association. We belong to ACS, the American Chemical Society. We presented at all of these different things, but we've also will have about 4 papers published on this last grant. So all of these things add to the way that you're disseminating, and the way that you disseminate and the more that you disseminate also will probably make it more likely that if you apply for another grant, these are going to be the first things you're going to talk about at the beginning of the grant, because they're going to say, what are the grants have you had in the last 5 years, and what has been accomplished in those grants. All right. When you list the publications now, they automatically go up on a national database. It checks to whether those publications have been published, and it checks the journal. We discussed the research and the impact of the grant itself. So my report and the evaluators report is something that I was talking about. There's a table with a line in it each for each of the scholars, and the recruitment and the retention for these students, and how you are keeping track of them, number of recipients who withdrew or may have been dismissed, number of students who might be in repayment. We do something like Ann does with the repayment with the students. It's really hard for students that have dropped out of the program, even when the college puts things into their own collection, to get any type of the money back. It doesn't go back to Noyce, it goes back to the federal government. Okay. Again, where each of your recipients stands, all of these people have to be tracked, in relationship to the service requirement. How many years did they teach? As I said, it's different for undergraduates and graduates. Graduates, it's generally 2 years for every year, as I said earlier. Undergrads, 4 years for the 2 years that they receive. Any demographics that might be required that you might want to keep, okay, and some of those demographics you may want to keep for yourself, okay, only if you're reporting on certain things on how you are effective. We are a double minority serving institution, both HSI and an Asian serving institution. So we keep track of all of these, all this type of data as well. And your progress, this all goes in your report, the progress that you have in producing the number of new STEM teachers that you promised in the proposal. Like I said, 1 year we promised 48, we delivered 52. This time we promised 30. It looks like we'll deliver 33 in June. What if I do it? I think I mentioned this, so I'll just go through it already. If you don't agree with the evaluator report, write a rebuttal. Okay. And That's it. I hope I didn't bore you with the specific details of reporting, but there's a lot of it for the grant to make it to make yourself successful, to keep the data so that you have the information you need when you need it, and even if you want to publish with it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Farenga. And we will hand over to our last, but certainly not least speaker, Dr. Vestal.
Thank you all for joining us today. Okay, so I'm gonna brag a little bit about our program, and then I'll kind of talk about how I think the best way to approach writing a Noyce project is. So our project at SDSU, we've had 3 grants. The first one we got in 2007, then 2014, and then 2019. And we've given out 1.4 million in scholarships. 1.1 million of that has been canceled through service. We've produced 84 math and science teachers. If I take the total number of years teaching of all of our alumni, it's 500 years. And we have about 80% of our alumni taught for at least 5 years. We have had several in the last couple of years that have quit teaching, but you know, we're still doing pretty well. So as I mentioned, I'm gonna think about how things you should do before you submit, things you should do when writing your proposal, and then what you should maybe do after you're funded. Okay, so before you submit, I'm going to say this multiple times, read the RFP carefully. That you have to follow that to a T. If you do anything incorrect, your whole proposal is going to get tossed. So you definitely have to do that. Attend a Noyce webinar, talk to your financial aid office, talk to your loan collections office, find a good external evaluator, which Anne and Steve both mentioned. Think about research questions, which Steve talked about as well. And ask the institution what type of support they're going to provide for you. So when you're reading the RFP, make sure that your institution has the majors, they have to be a content major. So there are certain CIP codes that your majors have to be in order to have a Noyce grant and fund people under a Noyce grant. And note that Noyce doesn't fund education degrees. They have to be content degrees. Identify an area high need local education agency that is going to partner with you, get letters from them early in the process. Pay attention to budget restrictions. In the latest RFP, scholarships have to be 60% of the total direct costs. If you have not done that, they're going to ask you to either redo your budget or they potentially could reject your proposal. Attend a Noyce webinar. They offer them every year and they record them and they're wonderful. So be sure you do that. Read the RFP again, read it before the webinar, and think about questions you might have that you can ask if it's live, or if there are questions that you can't ask when it's live, go ahead and email a program officer and ask them questions. They're always very willing to help you. Talk to your financial aid office. The Noyce does require the FAFSA to be completed, so you need to make sure you put that when you're asking students to apply, that they have to do the FAFSA. When do they anticipate they will get the FAFSA information for all the students? Last year, there was a big kind of fiasco with the FAFSA, and so some of the information didn't come until later. So you can't really make a decision necessarily until you have all that information. What other scholarship policies on campus do you need to know about in order to facilitate this program? And how are you going to decide, who you select? So what's the application process look like? What might you do for an interview? What interview questions might you use? Loan collections. Ultimately, you're going to have at least one person who you're going to have to probably collect money from. And so you need to be good friends with the people in your loan collections office at your university. And they probably have a specific way they want you to track the money that you've given out. One thing that I ran into this last year or so is, what is their hardship criteria if you want to forgive a loan? I wanted to do forgiveness on a couple people, and our university apparently didn't have like an actual committee or a process for people to do that, so they had to create one. Loan collections also, I think they get audited like once a year, so I have to get my spreadsheet that they have given me. They have a certain format. I have to get it to them with all the information they want at a certain point in the year. And so find out when that is, so you can be a good steward and get them what they need. Find an external evaluator. This has been brought up by both Ann and Steve. You want a good external evaluator. They should be involved in writing it, because they're going to need to include their evaluation plan, and sometimes they'll include a logic model explaining why they're using this type of evaluation. Be sure you have enough money in the grant for this piece. A good external evaluator is not cheap. And the other thing to think about is research questions, and Steve brought this up. You're going to want to be able to get publications out of this grant, even though that's not the biggest intent of the grant. The intent is to support students to become STEM teachers, but at the same time, as a faculty member, you need to think about tenure and promotion criteria, and you're going to need to be able to have some publications. So how is the evaluator going to help you answer your research questions with their evaluation? Make sure that you are, and the other thing is the research aspect will help you if you're going to go after another Noyce project. Align the research questions with the data the external evaluator was going to collect anyway. Make sure that you're reasonable about what your research you can get done, because you're going to not have a lot of extra time necessarily. And how much support are you going to get from the institution? Like, because you have to do data submission to NSF, you have to get paperwork together for the project. Who's going to help you take care of the travel paperwork and reimbursement for travel? And you have to track the scholars. So these are all things that take time, and are they going to support you and give you someone to help you with this, or give you a GTA or GRA? When you're writing the proposal, read the RFP. I'm going to keep saying that. And then I'm going to tell you to follow the RFP. So not only read it, but make sure you follow the instructions. If you have questions, ask the program officer. If you have team members that are working with you that are helping write pieces, get those early so that you can make them sound cohesive. Make sure you have all parts of the proposal where they are supposed to go. They basically give you an outline in there of what sections you need, so follow that. You're going to live and breathe the RFP. I like literally print it out, and then I am going to have it with me probably a lot of the time, and pay attention to details. Details are so important when you're doing this. Make sure you have a lot of documents you have to gather from your co-PIs. Make sure you give your time to do that. And again, ask questions. I know that Steve and Ann and I are willing to answer questions as well. Follow the RFP. Prior NSF support, you have up to 5 pages, but you only have 15 pages total. So can you afford to use 5 of them for your prior NSF support? It probably depends. If you have a really good project and you have a lot of good outcomes, yes, you probably should use those 5 pages. Make sure you're also looking at the proposal guide, the PAPG. It's NSF comes out with new ones on occasion, so make sure you're following the latest version. Make sure you have a broader impact section in your proposal, an intellectual merit section in your proposal. Follow the margin instructions, the font size, pagination, everything. All details are important. If something in the RFP is unclear, ask someone. Ask questions of your grants office. Ask co-PIs for help. No question is too small. When you're writing and organizing, make sure it sounds cohesive. As I said, put things in the order the RFP asks you to. Pay attention to what goes into like the supplemental documents section and all that, because there's certain things that go in certain places and you need to put them where they're supposed to go. After getting an award, make a plan of action, listing what needs to be done immediately, start recruiting. It's one of the hardest parts. And as I think Steve alluded to, are you going to have an online application? What kind of questions are you going to ask? Keep in mind, NSF is going to want to collect data, so you should probably make sure you know what that data is so that you can ask it. I now have that on the application. I did not the first time we did applications. And divide up work with your co-PIs. So things that I think are important that need to be done if you get awarded is have a website, because that will help with recruitment. You're going to want a good promissory note. Anne alluded to the contract, but that's the same thing. And I essentially found someone else's that I borrowed and modified. What's the application process look like? What are the criteria? How is your mentoring program going to work? Who's going to be coordinating it? Are you going to have an annual conference? Steve mentioned he does. My program also does. It's kind of an important thing. We have ours in the summer, usually in June. And how are you going to do the follow-up and tracking of scholars? Because that does take up time, and it is really important for your project and for NSF. Recruitment. So here are some things that we've done or we've thought about for recruitment. Some of them we've done. We did not do table tents, but someone said you make table tents and you put them like in the student union, and that helps people see, make it more visible. What we've done is we've emailed to all the majors from the department head. So I forwarded to the department head and asked them to email all the majors. I've sent emails to our first year advisors. I've put an ad in the student newspaper. Oh, there's monitors across campus, so you can make an electronic ad and have it placed there. We've held a recruitment event where we had pizza and we had scholars come in and talk. And so the potential scholars could ask questions. And of course, your website. Things that you probably should ask for on the online application, because these are things NSF wants: their date of birth, their ethnicity, their race, if they have a disability, their status, and then anything else. I think those are the main things that I've had to add that have gone into the reporting requirements, but it is helpful to have all that. So questions. So now I think it's the time I get to stop sharing, and now we get to, you get to ask us questions.
Yep, if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. You can come off mute and share them. You can raise your hand, use the raise your hand feature. Or if any of our speakers, if you have thoughts or comments on what everyone else shared, feel free. Oh, we got our first question from Monica with a raised hand.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. This has been very informative and so on. I have a question because we struggle a bit with the recruitment. So I think Steve was the one that mentioned a bit the struggle. And I just want to learn from your experiences, what was the strategy really that you found it the most useful? And something that I heard new was sending letters to the students at home that potentially even parents or a family member can end up reading them. But I just want to hear a little bit more about your recruitment successful strategy. Thank you.
So Monica, what we did was we went to the science graduates, both juniors, seniors, and the last 2 years of students who graduated with a science degree: chemistry, earth science, geology, physics, and biology. And we sent letters, just mass letters out to all of them, just stating that we've received the scholarship. This is what the scholarship involves. They can set up time for an interview. And I think Sharon said it, the most important thing is to have a website set up. So on the website, they could apply, just apply there, answer certain questions, and then the director would, call them back, or one of us would call them back at that point. So we found really this snail mail. We were a little surprised, but and it's a little more expensive now than it used to be, but it actually worked for us, the best. And we did it around graduation time too, right after they were getting graduate, where students weren't quite sure what they wanted to do, maybe not sure what they wanted to do. And the other lucky thing that we have is two of my other colleagues, along with myself, will teach a large science class. So they teach a large lecture bio class where there might be, 400 students in there, and then just mentioning, look, we have the grant, have you ever thought of teaching? And that seemed to work. That's all I have for that. I don't have any.
So our project is with undergraduate students, so it's a little bit different than Steve's. And I will say that, honestly, now at this point, because we are on our third grant, a lot of it is word of mouth. The students talk about it. They talk about our program. They talk about the advantage of being in our program. And that has helped a lot with recruitment. I know that doesn't help you when you're starting, but eventually, hopefully you get to that point.
Yeah, for us, we just, when we first started, we definitely did a lot of campaigns. Like we even put ourselves in the quad of the campus with a table, and we we're doing we made like fake tattoos, like like stickers, and we had we had raffles, and people came over to the table, and then we gave them things. And when we first started to recruit, and the thing that the orientation definitely helps to have the parent there, those orientation meetings when we were first starting, especially. And then one of the things that and I'll be honest, that helped us was that UTeach started about the same time our first Noyce started. We had both start at the same time. And the strategy of UTeach is you try out teaching with a 1 credit hour course, and you grab as many freshmen or as many anybody start at any stage of your degree, but you cast a wide net to try out teaching. They try out teaching in an elementary school. You might have 150 sign up, 1 credit hour. They needed 1 credit hour. They try out teaching their STEM major, and then 50 of them like it, and so but the rest of them don't. That's okay. But now we went from 5 secondary science teachers and math certified a year to 50 when we had Noyce and UTeach start together. They were funded at the same year. And and we've maintained not that many because COVID dropped, but we're going back up again slowly. But we've maintained a much higher, never down to 5 again. We were like 5. It was terrible because they were lost. They didn't know where to go. They didn't have an academic home. So with those 2 programs together, we created an academic home for them. Now they know where to go. They've got UTeach, Noyce as one, almost, together. And so that really did help us to have this program where they earn their science degree and their certification together. Anyway, that really helped. And again, we have a larger pool to choose to go with. And then the ones that say, definitely, I want to be a teacher, do Noyce, because the UTeach students don't have to teach after they finish, but Noyce do. So we make sure that's clear. Right? So anyway, that helped us. Anything else?
Next question I see in the chat is more of a comment looking for suggestions. Sounds like some of you have also tried to build a cohort of scholars, but struggled with recruitment. We're also thinking about this challenge. Would love to have $5 to $6 each cycle, but we worry about being able to recruit in those numbers. Any thoughts on those concerns, or if you all have had those similar concerns and responses?
I think I've had, I don't know if we're on like our 14th cohort, and they've been so many different sizes. I think it's hard to be consistent. Obviously, if you say you're going to give out 8 scholarships a year, you try and do that, but it's sometimes hard to find 8 people that are willing to do it. Teaching is tough right now, and I think that's something, and I think that the Facts Out organization that Anne mentioned is a good one to go to. to help with recruitment. They
Mhm.
have some materials that you can use. So I would suggest checking them out if you haven't already.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
Right.
reminds me of, oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, right, yeah, I mean, get the facts out. They'll have information on like salary in your area, typical starting salary in your county. So I don't know what it's like in others, but in Dallas Fort Worth area, they're in low to mid 60s starting salary, and with signing bonus for STEM fields. And for students who are just out of college, and we have a lot of Pell Grant students, we have a lot of students right here at UTA that are struggling, with debt, with college debt. So that's that's pretty good start. Not only do they get the scholarship, but then they start at 64,000 for a teaching job. So there, that helps us. Honestly, so I know that we're in a good position here with recruitment. So, and I know that may not be the case, but get the facts everywhere. But get the facts out does give you that information, and it compares to other fields. So that you can say, do you really want to work in a factory lab, or do you really, or whatever, or do you want to work with work with teachers? So anyway, go ahead. I didn't want to. Drew, I know you wanted to say something.
I was just to say, it reminds me of, I believe this is during one of the proposal prep webinars that we offered with program officers from NSF, where I think Jennifer Ellis commented on the amount of recruiting, and if you don't get to that number that you aspired for, anyone that you're able to pull in is still a success. So that's something I just want to underscore that she said. And that kind of leads to this question here regarding finances. Someone wrote, loan forgiveness has come up a lot today. Can you give examples, situations in which this would be appropriate?
Well, I had two recently that got forgiven because of hardship. Because I'm the one that brought it up. One of them had so many other student loans that with her salary, I don't think we'd ever be able to get it. So the university was like, okay, this is kind of silly that would go after her for that. The other one was a student who actually didn't finish the program, but had started and gotten one semester of scholarship. So didn't know a lot, but she also had cancer in there. So I was like, can we do something, because I don't want to, have to go after someone who has potentially health expenses too. So those were the two situations I was encountering.
Ours was, we had one was health, there were health issues, severe health issues. And that the college just was not going to take that up.
For us, so well, they have 8 years. So okay, so different things happen. If a student, like for example, we've had some that were removed from student teaching because that didn't have, it was rare, but there was one removed from student teaching. So they're still in the middle of their scholarship. So we canceled their scholarship. We could cancel their scholarship while they're still in the program. So then we didn't have to go through all that. We just canceled their scholarship. And they were just removed. We tried them in 3 different schools, in every school. Yeah, that happened once or twice, and not very, very often. But we've had hundreds of students. Anyway, the ones that then don't fulfill like their teaching obligation, they do finish successfully everything, but then they don't get a teaching job. They have 8 years, so we're tracking them for 8 years. We have some now that we've tried to find ourselves first. If we can find them and we find out what's going on, great. But most of the time right now, we're sending the list up over to the financial aid office, and And they're gonna have to figure out how to, that they put on, that they owe the university, or they don't owe the university, but they're, whatever they need to do, to say, you are in debt this amount. And I hate that. I feel awful. But we've told them ourselves many times. We first reach out to them and say, this is going to happen. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? Are you going to come back? Are you going to finish? We tell them up front when they sign up. It's like, but I cannot tell you this one how many times. Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but we tell them. But then if they disappear, it's on them. I can't help it. You can't do that. You took this scholarship away from someone who really needed it, because there could have been another student who really needed that scholarship and really had passion for teaching and wanted to teach. And you took the money and went and didn't do it. So my heart feels bad, but I have to be logical and say, no, they got to pay it back. They have to pay it back. Stop, go ahead and report them. So I do. I keep that list. It's painful.
As we come to the end here, one specific question for Steve. For the snail mail, people are wondering how you do get those addresses. Are they high school graduates, community college graduates?
The snail mail that we send out, as I had mentioned, we do the juniors and seniors of the STEM majors that we certify in. Okay, so that goes out, and then the 2 years after they've graduated. So if they've graduated, 1 year and the year that follows, then that goes out. So if they haven't found other careers, or as it was alluded to, I won't say if they were working in a science research factory, and they're not happy being, working with the test tubes and want to try something else, we get them who've come back to us. This year, I'm always a little bit hesitant about them, but we've had 2 engineers who have come back for training, who want to be teachers, physics teachers. But in New York State, if it's an applied science, it doesn't count. So if it says engineering, it doesn't say physics. We don't count the credits. So some of them are a little surprised. And we have 2 doctors who are now in the program, MDs. They're about 48 years old, who've practiced for a number of years and just said medicine has just become like a factory, and they're not happy with it. And I said, are you sure you want to go into teaching and be in a classroom? But we'll give it a shot. And I've been really surprised, I must say, that I've been very pleased with them, because I did a project when Grumman on Long Island was closing, they were moving to Virginia. I did a project of retraining the Grumman engineers to be physics teachers. And we had about 80 of them. And I'll say we got about 2 viable physics teachers out of them. They were not very flexible people, but you don't know. But that's how we found that to be, pretty effective. But we did other things, like to other state universities where students traveled, away to go to school, such as upstate New York or out at Stony Brook or things as such like that, where they do come back, they've got their science degrees, and they, do want to teach at that point. But one of the things that we developed that made it very interesting for them is we did an MAT program, which was 42 credits, but the first 24 credits allowed them to get state certification, so that they could then be certified, be in a classroom with initial certification, and finish the rest of the degree at night, then the master's. So that made it at least doable, plus the Noyce scholarship. Plus, we did another project where while students are student teaching, and after the state requirement of the number of hours, since we require way more, over 330 hours a semester, they can be paid for that through the federal work study program. And as Sharon said, you must fill out a FAFSA. So if they fill out the FAFSA, then they can apply for the work study program too. So I had one student who made $8,000 in addition, to being in the classroom. So all of those things help.
And I know there are more questions in the chat, and I do want to be mindful of people's time since we've gone a little bit over, so I appreciate everyone staying here. I have saved the questions are in the chat, so I will send those to the speakers, but I believe they have also provided their emails at the end of their slides, which will be available online, so feel free to reach out. But I just have a few closing remarks I'd like to share, and then
May I just say one thing that
Yeah, go for it.
Sharon brought up that's really very important to all the people? Make sure you get those letters of support first. And because those letters of support are very important. And if you wait till the last minute, you may not get them because they do have to come from superintendents and, you know, from districts, from those lead education agencies. And they don't always come around as fast as you might think. So when Sharon said that, that really is really an important thing because that's outside your control.
Awesome. Thank you for providing that, Steve. Before I would go, I'd like to thank our track 1 speakers, the rest of the AAAS Noyce team, and all of you who are able to join and participate today. I also appreciate you all staying a few minutes after. And although this is track 1, this is the last installment of our 2024 series. If you missed the webinars on the other 3 tracks or are interested in revisiting them, the recordings of the entire series will be up on the nsfnoyce.org website in the coming weeks. We have a survey link, which we are posting in the chat and sending via email. The survey should only take a few minutes, but as said, this is our first time doing the PI peer series, so please let us know if you enjoyed it and what you'd like to see more of in the future. We'd really appreciate your feedback so we can build on the series in the coming years. And I also want to highlight that AAAS Arise is currently accepting blog submissions. The Arise project seeks to provide resources, tools, and community to foster research and evidence-based innovation in STEM pre-service teacher education and leadership development programs. Through the Arise blog series, we have shared information about topics and strategies for preparing STEM teachers for the future, assessing efficacy in STEM teaching, and understanding effective ways to recruit, train, and retain a quality STEM teacher workforce. In 2025, the goals remain the same, but we seek to focus on particular communities, such as rural, urban, and indigenous, and on promising practices from a range of institutions, such as HBCUs, TCUs, HSIs, small liberal arts, and community colleges, to reach the broad collection of Noyce projects and constituencies. If you'd like to submit your work, check out AAAS-arise.org. With an extended deadline, submissions are due January 6th in 2025. So until next time, as always, take care and thank you so much. Happy holidays, everyone.